You took a bus ride over the
I did.
weekend, but not the kind of bus ride that I was expecting, I guess. Was it? We're gonna have to get into this
We will.
because I've got so many questions. You were very excited when you texted me about this bus ride. And I'm like,
Which we will find out
what has Ed
shortly.
done now? Why? Why is this so interesting? I'm Phil Royle. I am one of the co-hosts here on the podcast and one of the co-creators on the blog. I've been doing automotive content creation and journalism for 2 decades, more than 2 decades. And I've been busy putting new products on the whatcar.com/store, which helps support the blog and the podcast. This week, a new hat showed up. Yeah, I was watching some YouTubers and they had a cool hat, and I was like, I wonder if I could recreate that with our logo. And sure enough, I did.
Boom.
So there's a it's Champion brand because I don't like going with the cheap stuff. So it's a
Oh,
good
nice.
brand, so you'll pay a little bit more, but it's got our logo on there. And some of the other stuff that we got up there does not have our logo, that they are like EV displacement replacement, EVAF, charge. What's yours? There's an
There's
adapter
an
for
adapter
that.
for that.
There's a variety, and I think the majority of stuff's reasonably priced. Support us. Help support the blog and the podcast and the 30 goal of 30 minutes of entertainment, but in reality, 45 to 50 minutes of entertainment that we supply on a weekly basis.
Ed Sanchez, likewise, 20 plus years in automotive content creation and moderation. Current day job, automotive electronics industry analyst, and the Watt Car co-founder and contributor and bus rider.
Bus rider, slumming it,
Slumming
slumming
it.
it. I would have thought you live in Monterey. Like, you should be riding in Rolls Royces, right?
Yeah, needing my caviar and sipping my champagne, right?
So, what happened with this bus ride?
So there is a kind of a art festival happening in this little area called Sand City, which is kind of anyway. I won't go too far into the weeds, but so you live in Southern California. You've heard of the city of Vernon,
I have.
where their actual population is only like 500 people. So it's predominantly businesses and commercial. Anyway, I'm going off into the weeds again. Anyway,
You are. I'm still waiting for where you.
oh,
Where,
so Sand City is kind of similar in that it's been predominantly it's almost like a little carve out of a larger city called Seaside, and then there's Sand City kind of almost within that, which is almost entirely businesses. They're starting to build some residential stuff, and I think they're trying to kind of create more of a name for themselves, rather than just the Costco and Target and you know that sort of thing. So they had a little street fair with local vendors, so on and so forth. So they had some of the streets shut down. So a friend and I went to this festival, but there wasn't on-site parking. So they said, "Oh, well, if you park here, a shuttle will pick you up and take you to the craft fair or festival or whatever."
this is
So
riveting so far. Riveting.
oh, just wait, it'll get better. So we kind of waited at the staging area, and this little shuttle bus. It's definitely smaller than your typical municipal bus, but it's bussy. Um, and pulls up, and it's almost completely silent. I'm like, oh, it's electric. And then I look more closely, and right at the front says BYD. So yeah. So
So was it self-driving?
no.
Oh, so you
The
actually got where you were
human
going? You didn't crash on the
no, yeah,
way.
no, it had a driver, but yeah. So the people say, well, BYD isn't on American roads yet. Au contraire, yes, it is. Um, so I guess they've been building these. I want to say in Irwindale let's say like for the past 4 or 5 years, maybe. Um, so they are in the commercial space. They're not yet in the passenger car space in the U.S. They are starting to sell in Mexico. passenger and light duty vehicles, but they're already in the commercial space, and it seemed nice. I mean, to me, transit buses all kind of look the same. It's hard to determine, oh, this is a high end finish, or this is, more, entry level. It's like, buses are buses.
Yeah,
I mean,
when you get into the if you're a bus expert,
aficionado.
yes, then I'm sure you could look at it and go, ah, they use such and such supplier for this and parts and whatever. But we're kind of generalists.
Yes.
And I've always had the problem of my knowledge is like a mile wide, but an inch deep
Yeah.
on a lot of things. So yeah, I'm sure it's great.
Yeah.
Did you leave wanting
I
to
know
buy
they're
one?
out there. I know, there are some cities that have BYDs in their fleet. Um, I think LA has some. But like I said, the one particular one I rode, it reminded me more like the size and configuration. You know how a lot of airports have the rental car lots offsite.
Mm-hmm.
So you go to kind of the pickup area at the terminal, you get the shuttle bus that takes you to the rental site, slightly off site from the airport. It was that size and type of bus in terms of configuration, I'd say. So uh, passenger capacity, if I had to guess, 30 maybe. Because like in the back, the seating was like U-shaped in the back. So like you have a row in the back and rows on the sides, and that kind of goes up, and then obviously some grab handles for standing room. So yeah, so about that size. But
So are you
anyway,
rushing
so
out to buy one?
I'm sure that one was probably, if I had to guess, probably 150, $200,000. So
Oh yes,
there's
definitely.
to be perfectly honest, for their purpose, they're fine. There's other vehicles I'd rather spend that amount of money on, but BYD is in the US, so people say that Chinese are coming. Newsflash, they're here.
This sounds vaguely familiar to me. I think I knew this. I'm not 100% sure. So I'll
Yeah.
take it as new information to me. Do you want to talk about fires again?
I guess this seems to be like the fire that just won't go out about EVs. So
I
now we have another one to talk about.
There's a George Strait song here, isn't there? You're the fire that I just can't put out. I think that's a George Strait song.
Or well, the one I'm thinking of is I'm the fireman. That's my name.
Oh, I know
I'm
that
the
one too.
fireman. That's my name. Anyway,
So I thought when we titled last week's show, I thought that we would not be doing another show on
EV
fires again.
fires.
But apparently I'm we're totally doing another episode on fires. We're going to keep this one fairly short, I think. But since last week happened, what was it last week? Last week, a Mercedes caught on fire in South Korea,
Yeah.
and Tesla semi caught on fire in Northern California. I have not
Yes.
heard reports of anything about those two fires since then. Like, I don't think they still know yet with the Tesla semi. I did do a little research on semi batteries as far as size goes because I was like, what, maybe 500 kilowatt hour? It's like 900.
So
So,
almost what would that be, a terawatt hour?
yeah, it's pretty
It's big.
big. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when that starts to go, there's potentially a problem
You
there.
just try to secure the perimeter and just kind of let it go. I would
Yeah,
guess just
which it seems to be
let
what
it
they
burn
did
out.
because this thing burned to the ground. So
Yeah.
no definitive information on that, no definitive information on the Mercedes one. And since then, the Rivian plant in Normal, Illinois has not burned to the ground. It was just a small fire. And it sounds like it was in the parking lot. But
Hmm.
last reports I was seeing, there was one on Reuters, and they said their report was a fire broke out in a parking lot at Rivian's automotive manufacturing facility late on Saturday, damaging many of its electric vehicles, the US startup said on Sunday. That tells me it's in the lineup of vehicles that where they pull out of the manufacturing place and then they park them all. That's what that tells me.
Yeah.
If it
Staging,
yeah,
like before they ship them off.
if
Yeah.
it damaged many of its electric vehicles, I'm guessing this isn't an employee parking lot. that this is
The
Rivian owned
staging
vehicles.
area, yeah.
Yeah. There were no reports of injuries, yada yada. Fire was in a parking lot on the north side of the 4 million square foot factory, yada yada. The assembly plant was unaffected, the police department said in a statement. So we don't know what caused this. This could have been a 12-volt fire that
Just
caught
got out of
something on fire.
control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that happens.
Yeah.
Like, there are other reasons for fires.
Yeah, I don't know if there's like an official report on this now. From what I saw based on like the aerial photo or whatever, it looks like maybe about a dozen vehicles were burned, maybe. And then like of that, they kind of put like barriers around, it looked like maybe about 40 or 50 vehicles to just try to contain it. So not insignificant, but not the end of the world. I mean,
So over the weekend, we had a little gathering at my house, and one of my friends drives a Model 3 Performance. And so she came over. I can't remember how we started talking about fires, but but this came up in conversation. And I mentioned yada yada, EV fires, something something. And she said, "Wait, what?" She had never heard of an EV fire, didn't
didn't know
know
it was a
anything
thing.
about them. She was like, genuinely, is this something I should be concerned about? Is this something I need to worry about? And I'm like, no. In
Yeah,
a
probably
nutshell,
not.
no. I did a little bit of research, found a Forbes article that is then quoting a auto insurance EX, whatever that is,
Yeah.
representative, but Forbes felt like they would quote them. And a survey from them found, or a study from them found, that EVs exhibit, I'll quote the Forbes article, EVs exhibit 61 times fewer fires per 100,000 sales than ICE vehicles. So I didn't have that statistic on hand when I talked to her, but I had the general, you're actually, less likely to catch fire than an ICE vehicle. So just don't really worry about it. But in the event that it does start to smoke and start to fire,
Run.
just know, well, you don't even have to run fast. It's not like how I referenced chips before where the cars would roll over and explode. These don't seem to explode. They seem to
Smolder, and then, but
smolder.
once
And
they
then,
get going, they're going.
yeah, you seem to have plenty of, there's not like a moment of like gasoline. You're always like, it could blow up.
Yeah.
With this, it doesn't seem like there's a moment where you've got your 60 kilowatt hour battery pack and it's going to go boom. That doesn't seem to exist. The
No.
only one that I've seen footage of where that does exist turned out to be a fake video where they were trying to prove that EVs can catch on fire. So they actually jumped it and gashed the battery at the same time, which is a completely plausible test. I mean, whether it actually happened, who knows, but it could. But so when it did that and the Model S went, it then ignited and you could see this explosion. And it turns out they'd actually put explosive packs in there to create
Oh
the
boy.
fire. Yeah. And I've not seen anything outside of that, which was proven fake, where there is a moment of ignition, like a whoosh that you've got to be careful of. So I just told her, if your car starts smoking, go park it
Pull
somewhere
over,
else.
get out. Yeah.
Yeah, but don't park it near don't park it in your driveway. Like maybe park it in the middle of the road or something where it can smolder.
Or not near brush or
Yeah.
foliage.
This isn't something they're going to be able to come over to your house and put out immediately, or your workplace or whatever. This is something that could take a while, but you don't really need to worry about it. But it was fascinating to me because she'd never heard of it. It was like, we hear of these fires, and with last week's thing, I was like, is this starting again? And then the Rivian's caught on fire, and I was like, is this starting again?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, is this now a new rash of EV fires? But the reality is, your everyday EV owner, not your early adopters, not your enthusiasts, but somebody who bought one as a vehicle because she went, that seems like a nice vehicle. I'd like to drive a Tesla. I want kind of a high-end vehicle, and not paying for gas sounds great. She's never heard of this.
Yeah. I mean, statistically, they're rare, but kind of circling back to what I said earlier, is because of the nature of battery chemistry, they don't they tend to keep burning. Once it starts, they just kind of go and go and go. So I think this is a tough one because you can slice and dice that story and those stats a lot of different ways. So EV proponents could say, oh, statistically, they're much less likely than ICE or even hybrids to catch fire. But other people would say, yeah, but if they do, you know, gather your belongings and get out. Because,
And I don't know the actual
yeah.
statistic. It may be that for the number of EVs sold,
Mhm.
there are higher fires.
No, actually,
Is it not?
what I saw,
I've never seen a number that says that it is, but I'm trying to think of how you could parse the statistic to prove
so
that ice is safer.
I'm
I've never
trying,
seen one. I've never heard of one.
so I'm going to try to share this with you in the chat. I don't know how well this is going to work, but I'm going to, so I don't know if you can see that.
Uh,
Um,
okay, so yeah, I can see it, but I don't really know. Uh,
but I mean, you can see the bars and you can see electric is just tiny, and that's proportional to number of units sold.
yeah, so total, let's see, fires per 100,000 sales, electric is 25.1, gas is 1,529.9, and hybrids are 3,474.5. So the
Per 100,000 sales.
per 100,000 sales. So it seems like you do not want a hybrid.
Well, I mean, that's kind of interesting that that's kind of,
I wonder why that is. I got to dig
I,
into that. I think I found a new thing to do.
yeah,
Start researching why hybrids are more likely to catch on fire.
yeah,
They're a lot more complex. It's either the best or worst of both worlds. And
yeah,
apparently when it comes to fires, they are definitely the worst.
yeah. Anyway, so I mean, so what was the takeaway from that conversation? Was she's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to sell it," and da, 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 or did you say, "No, don't sweat it. Yes,
Yeah,
it
I
happens, but
said
they're rare." You
yeah.
know.
I said don't worry about it. If it goes up in flames, it'll take a while to put itself out or for anybody to put it out, but don't worry about it. And she's like, "Oh, that's good to know." And moved on with the conversation. Like,
Yeah,
you
and
know, I,
she was happy with it and enjoys it. And
yeah, she likes car. I'll be curious to know
mhm.
if she gets
Is it the
another
high?
one.
Is it the 20? Is it the new one, or is it one
No,
she's had a few
no,
years?
she's had it for a few years.
Oh, okay,
But I'll be curious to know when that's. I don't know if it's a lease or if she bought it. I don't like.
hmm
I don't
hmm
remember. But I'll be curious to know if she replaces it with another electric vehicle
hmm
because she changes out vehicles fairly regularly and kind of goes for
My
what's
big
cool.
question, I don't know if you discuss this or know this, if she has 240-volt home charging.
She, I don't believe, did. She just bought a house.
Oh, okay,
And
okay,
so now I bet she does. But before she was in an apartment. So she has
gotcha.
owned this car
Okay,
for several years in an apartment, and I would guess she didn't. But she also went to an office. I mean, here in Hollywood, she goes to a movie studio. So I'm guessing at the
they probably
studio,
had workplace charging.
they
Is my
probably
guess.
had at least level two on, beyond the security gates and
Yeah.
whatnot. So I don't think that was a problem. She never brought
All
up
right.
charging. The only time that I've ever had a or not, I've ever, the only time that it's ever come up as like an issue is like she'll come over to somebody's house and she doesn't want to charge at the house. So she'll say, we'll be like, oh, we need to run out and grab some, food or whatever. And she will
hmm
volunteer and she'll be like, I'll be back in like half an hour. I'm just going to go and top up the car. And so she'd
Oh.
find a place with a level three and she'd
hmm
charge, go get the food and come back. Uh, you know,
hmm
so she may have been living off. I need to have that conversation. She may have been living
Yeah,
off
I'm
credit
just
on
kind of
purpose.
curious how she made it work because I mean, I, I I don't know. A couple weeks ago, there's a story I want to say was on Inside EVs. I believe it was Kevin Williams who had, I think it was a Kona EV or something, and he, like our friend Zach Shahan, tried to make the case for level one charging, and I was kind of like that. I was like, yes, you can make it work. Is it the best option? No, but you know, I think most people don't want to rearrange their lives around charging their car. But I mean, for some people, they can make it work. But I
There
don't
were
know.
two articles in the last couple of weeks that were about level one charging,
hmm
or two articles that I saw that were about level one
hmm
charging. One of them was this lady who bought an EV and got
hmm
home, plugged it in. It was like 30% charge, and it was like 72 hours to full. And she was like, "Oh my God, what do I do?" And then another one was an article where it was similar. It was like 40 something hours to
Hmm.
full.
Hmm.
And these were people that didn't know the difference. So then it was an
Hmm.
article about education and
Hmm.
here's level one, level two, level three, blah, blah. But they were both by the author who had bought an EV, who was then went home, didn't know any different, plugged it in, and were like, ah. And then they turned it into money because they're freelance writers and did an article on it.
Well, I mean, that's plenty of grist for writing a whole bunch of art. I mean, and again, I was, I guess, arguably an EV enthusiast before I became an EV owner. So I did extensive research on charging times, charging types, adapters, charging networks. So
We're both
I,
weird. I do the same thing. Like before I bought my camper, I spent like
yeah,
2 months deep diving into campers. Then you start shopping for it.
yeah,
And that was
I don't
probably
know. I
definitely
guess
what
we're
we
the
needed.
weirdos. Everyone else just impetuously, just impulsively goes out and buys one and then
Those are the
figures
normies.
out after the fact. And they're like, oh, what do I do now?
But these are the people that we're dealing with that are the world. Like nobody's few people are into cars. You know, you look at like
Yeah.
Motor Trend, I forget what the numbers were, but Motor Trend at its highest distribution was a few million. But you go and you
Hmm.
look at like Vogue and whatever these magazines, back to magazine days, they were
Yeah.
like tens of millions.
Yeah.
It
Yeah. Yeah.
was
Yeah. Yeah.
what looked big in our little niche world of car geeks
Hmm.
was minuscule compared
Yeah.
to a slightly larger niche, which is minuscule to
People or National Enquirer or whatever.
yeah, those are like, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of
Yeah.
people. And we're in something, we're like, whoa, you got like 2 million distribution. Like, that's huge. No, it's a
Yeah.
tiny percentage. There's
Yeah.
just us, small number of geeks. Speaking of small number of geeks, you called this next item a week before it happened, I believe.
I
That
think it was more than that.
was
I
it more
think
than
I
that?
threw out this figure, I want to say months ago, as
Well,
just a
you
guess.
did it
I'm like,
again. Yeah, you did
I,
it again like a week or
oops,
so
I
ago.
did it again. Okay.
So that's your
So
second song. I think third straw, it's third song you're out. ID
three strikes,
Buzz.
you're out.
Yeah, ID Buzz.
ID Buzz.
VW's cool retro new old van
Retro futuristic EV van.
is coming to America. And we didn't know what we knew that it was probably going to come with a large battery pack. I think we knew that, or were we guessing that?
Yes, larger than the because the
Yes.
European model debuted short wheelbase, 5 passenger. The one we're getting longer wheelbase, 6 to 7 seat capacity. So we knew it was going to be larger. So now we know. I heard a rumor of an even bigger pack than they're announcing right now, which, based on some of the information we had, they might still be coming. Anyway, let's start from square one. So starting price on the ID Buzz Pro S, which is going to be the entry level model for the US market, $59,995. I called it at 60 grand. So, I mean, let's call it 60 grand. You include the 1,550 destination, starting price 61,454. The next step up is the Pro S Plus at 65, which includes destination. First edition, which is the special early adopter model, $67,045. And all of those prices are rear wheel drive. If you want all wheel drive, you can add 4,500 to all of those prices. So that means a first edition with all wheel drive, you're talking $71,545. What do we think about this?
I have become so numb to car prices. Breaking the 70,000 barrier is
On a
rough.
Volkswagen?
Is rough. I
Yeah.
can't even decide if so 4,500 for all-wheel drive. But if you get two-wheel drive, it's rear-wheel drive.
Mm-hmm.
And this was where my mind was is I think now granted I don't live up in the mountains or whatever, but I have lived in Pennsylvania, lived through the snow. I've experienced rear-wheel drive, front-wheel drive, all-wheel drive, slippery conditions. I've driven in them all. For a very versatile car,
Mm-hmm.
I think front-wheel drive is the way to go.
Mm-hmm.
It saves you on that. It would save you 4,500 bucks. in this case, it would get you traction that is safe because you're pulling the car and the back's not trying to pass the front.
Hmm.
Which now good stability control, traction control could probably take care of. But the fact that it's rear wheel drive or all wheel drive, I'm like,
Hmm.
son of a gun. Now you got to get all wheel drive for something like this. If you want this to go up where it's like potentially slippery or whatever, you want a safe family vehicle.
So you think the base model should have been front wheel drive?
I do.
Hmm.
Yeah. I'm
So you're
weird
not one of the
though.
purists that says, "Oh, this is the return to its roots because the original was rear wheel drive."
No, the original was a death trap. You don't want to go back to the original roots. The original one couldn't get up a hill if it was more than a 1% grade. Like,
Yeah.
have you ever been behind the original ones?
Oh,
I'd go
well, I
surfing.
mean, I live in
I,
coastal
I,
California.
yeah,
Well, I mean, we both do for that matter.
yes.
And a lot of them will actually have a sticker on it that says slow moving vehicle.
I've got to go to get to the beach to go surfing. I've got to go over a little mountain range. And regularly, there is a dude in one of these with surfboards either on top or in it, trying to go up this hill. And you can hear that thing is screaming at red line, and they're doing like 30 in a 45 or 50 mile an hour zone. You don't want to go back to the original of these. I think modern is fine, but I think for cars like this, a front wheel drive option would have been safer for the vast majority of people. I don't know why you would want rear wheel drive, and then I would take where the rear motor is,
Hmm.
and I would use that for storage.
Hmm. There's a case to be made. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I feel especially strongly one way or the other. I do feel strongly, and evidently some others. I've read some other kind of hot takes from other blogs and outlets that do think this is a little bit overpriced.
And for the range, so rear wheel
Yeah.
drive gets 234 miles, all wheel drive
Hmm.
gets
231.
231, and this 91 kilowatt hour battery pack.
Hmm.
Not the most efficient vehicle. Once
No,
again, we are in like this is in Rimatt's Navara R territory. In
in terms of efficiency,
terms of efficiency, yes.
probably more efficient than the MX-30,
Yes.
sadly.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So
um,
it doesn't go very far. It's got a pretty big battery
you're
pack.
starting to sound like Trump at a campaign stop.
It's you
You
gotta
don't go
flush
very
it.
far,
You
the
gotta flush it
horrible.
20 times for it to do anything. Wasn't that the anyway? Um, no, I really like the looks of these vans. I could
Hmm.
definitely see myself getting one. I am not going to spend $70,000 on an all-wheel drive one. I'm not going to spend $60,000 on a rear-wheel drive one. I would be the only way 230-mile range on something like this works is if you
Hmm.
can charge that in 10 minutes.
Hmm.
Outside of that, you're now and Volkswagens are not known for fast charging. They're known
Hmm.
for okay fast charging, but
Hmm.
not like
Hmm.
these aren't like Taycan, Lucid
Yeah.
territory. These things are average. These are okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I think it's still 400-volt architecture. I don't think it's 800-volt.
I don't think you necessarily need to go
No.
crazy, but you can make the curve better. You can power it in better. That there
Yeah.
is room for improvement, and they
Hmm.
haven't done it. It's not bad. None of this is to
Yeah.
say it's bad. It's just you don't have much range in a vehicle that's designed to take the family places. So now
Hmm.
imagine you take this vehicle that's rated at 230 miles, you load 7 people in it with
Hmm.
all of your bags, and then you
Hmm.
start on a road trip. Say it's slightly cold. What are you getting? 150 miles?
Maybe. Yeah.
And then you've got to charge it where it's not going to charge fast on a good day. And now you're charging it when it's cold. It's
Yeah.
not really a
No,
winning combination.
I think this is going to be a hit in the Sun Belt. You know, Texas, California, Arizona, Florida.
Oh,
Uh,
Texas, I'm going to see these things everywhere. I mean, the day the Cybertruck came out, they were all over my
yeah.
neighborhood. There's Cybertrucks at my kid's school. Like it's that thing took off. I
Yeah.
imagine I will see these once again day one. These will
Yeah.
be all over the place. And if I could get one for an affordable rate, I would be driving to the beach
Yeah.
with my surfboards in it, and I would be a happy little clam.
So so my take on this, and we've kind of seen this also with some other EVs where you have that initial high spike in demand. All the first adopters want to get theirs, and then you see demand kind of flatten out. I I don't want to sandbag it. I'm not wishing for it to fail, but I think you're going to see the same thing with this, where you're going to see very high initial, reservations, initial back orders for like maybe the first 12 to 18 months, dealers asking over MSRP, all that. But I feel when people look at the value proposition, they're going to be a little more ambivalent about it. And they're going to be like, it's cool. Yes, but it's expensive. The range isn't great. I don't know. I think, like I said, I think you're going to see the initial spike, and then I think you're going to see sales flatten out, unless Volkswagen lowers the price at some point. They may decide to do that. I'll tell you what I actually think the biggest competitor to this could be is the Pacifica plug-in hybrid, honestly.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what you thought the competition was, because the problem with the Cybertruck is they go to the Cybertruck and you look at that and you look at what you get and you look at the range and you look at what it can do and you look at the price now and you go, well, gee, I can go and buy something else. There's enough electric trucks. You can go somewhere else. The ID Buzz is a one of one right now. So if you wanted something else, you could say, well, the Model Y, but it's not.
Not the same, yeah.
It is different. This is a minivan that can carry a family. So the Model Y is superior in every way, other than it can't carry the number of people this can
comfortably,
carry the way that it can carry them.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really have good competition. Maybe like an EV9, but you're getting out of what it is. There's minivan people out there, and style, like lifestyle type thing.
Yeah.
So this is a one of one. So it's interesting that you would say the
Pacifica hybrid.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think what it's going to come down to is how much.
Actually, you wouldn't get that because they're just going to catch on fire.
Yeah, statistically.
Statistically, you're in danger.
I think with the ID Buzz, it depends on how much of a fashion statement people want to make. I consider this kind of a fashion statement car, kind of like the Cybertruck, to a lesser extent, Rivians. You want to convey a certain image. I'm cool, I'm hip, I'm, a model for a surfing magazine. I don't know.
You're just naming my life.
Just living the dream, right?
Yeah.
So I think for those people that really want one, they're really going to want one. Price will not be an issue. If it's a heart purchase, they're going to sell a bunch of them initially, but I think over time, demand is probably going to vary depending on how they price it going forward. We have seen this. I know this initial batch is going to come from Germany. There was some talk about building it in Chattanooga. I don't know if that's going to happen. If they were to do that, could be eligible for some more incentives. Now, that could change in about 4 or 5 months, depending on who's in the White House and how that situation goes. I don't know. I think it's cool. I think they'll sell some.
I think the danger they all have right now is the Cybertruck came out, and by all accounts, it had 1.5 million reservations. Nobody seemed to dispute that. It had.
Yeah, but that was based on the premise of a $40,000 starting price.
And now that people have seen for what you get for the price, this a year later, when they've delivered arguably 20,000, you can order and get one now. There's no waiting list. So the 1.5 million reservation holders vanished because of price and capability. And what does this ID Buzz have going against it? It doesn't have a good price and it doesn't have good capability.
Yeah.
So you might have the groups of people that go, oh yeah, this lifestyle is what I want. But I think the Cybertruck has just shown there's limitations. I mean, nothing is more like a style statement vehicle than the Cybertruck.
Yeah.
And suddenly 1.5 million became 20,000.
Yeah, and this is a style statement vehicle, I would say. We'll see how it goes.
Be careful.
I mean,
they got to be careful.
Anyway, well, it's kind of staying within the Volkswagen family. So and this wasn't on the rundown, but so the Ioniq 5N, Car and Driver named it their EV of the year, for what that's worth. And one of the favorite features, oddly, which, and I'm still kind of philosophically opposed to, but enough people have driven it. Full disclosure, I have not driven one yet. Is one of the drive modes. I don't know if this is N-Gren or it's one of the sub menu variations of N-Gren. It simulates gear shifts, both through an audible output, and I guess it kind of sends a little jolt through the powertrain to make it feel like it's shifting.
Similar to CVTs did.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe some of them still do, but early ones fake shifted.
Yeah. So, and some drivers said, "Oh, I actually like it because it's intuitive. It feels like, paddle shifters on a dual clutch, or
it's familiar.
Like it's familiar. The prompts, it kind of, you can set up for corners, you know when to, downshift and exit and all that. It's all fake. It's not real. So supposedly Porsche looked at this and considered that concept as well, I'm assuming for the Taycan, and they decided to pass on it because, in the words of Porsche development driver Lars Kern, his quote was, why should we make something worse, was his statement on that. And he has a point, because I think it was Haggerty. I think it was Jason Kamiss on Haggerty. So they tested it using the fake shifts and just flooring it and full EV mode, and it was faster in full EV mode without the electronic fakery. So I mean, there you go. I mean, do you want the sensation or do you want the performance? And
it would be a weird combination on the Porsche, because it actually has a shift, and then they would put in fake shifts beyond the actual shift. I wonder if they would actually.
So it actually does have a 2-speed rear motor. Yeah.
Yeah. So would they take that shift and make it more noticeable, and then add other shifts on top? Like, it's a really weird combination. I
don't know if you've heard this analogy. Some enthusiasts have said, well, yeah, but I could microwave a steak, but that doesn't mean I want to eat it. That's their analogy for, like, oh, EVs are faster. They're like, so what?
I just discovered that Costco sells microwavable bacon, so I don't believe that argument now. Anyway, when he says, why should we make something worse? Some people would say the Taycan. How do you say it? I always get it wrong. Taycan. I say Taycan. It didn't need the 2-speed. Some people say it didn't need the 2-speed transmission anyway, and I would say that every other EV manufacturer has proven that the Porsche didn't need the 2-speed transmission to begin with. So
including
Rimac that tested this. And I'm sure Tesla didn't the original
and the original Roadster, they tried a 2-speed transmission. They kept breaking it.
So many manufacturers, I'm sure all of them, like with the Hyundai with their performance models, I'm sure they've all tried this, and they have all come down to single speed is where we want to go. So why should we make something worse? Arguably, you did it already. So I don't know. They could do what they want.
To me, it's all just software. I mean, if for whatever reason Porsche got enough demand for this, it's something they could implement. Fake shifts and engine noise and whatever.
I am waiting for, similar to what Porsche did with their Magneto concept. Was it Magneto? Whatever it was. They had a Wrangler EV concept, and they did.
Jeep.
What did I say? Wrangler?
Jeep,
Porsche, whatever.
The Porsche Wrangler.
Jeep. Yeah. Yes, the Porsche, that famous off-roading Porsche Wrangler. They had one with a Wrangler EV concept with an actual transmission.
Manual transmission.
And that's not uncommon. When you do conversions, you can put it in something, and you can made it up to a transmission. You can start in third gear if you want, and it'll just pull whatever. It doesn't need the gears. But I think that eventually we're going to find somebody that releases an EV that's a budget EV with a piece of crap motor that can only spin to like 3,000 RPM or something,
Hmm.
but they're really cheap and they're not very balanced, and that's why you can't spin them very high. And the power's all wonky. But you made it with a manual transmission or an automatic transmission or a
Hmm.
CVT,
Hmm.
and now it needs that transmission in order to operate, but you can manufacture that motor for pennies on the dollar versus
Hmm.
these other ones. And I think eventually somebody will release that. Whether or not that's a good answer, whether or not that's where the economy market goes, I don't know. Probably
Hmm.
not. But I can see somebody doing that. I could see Hyundai coming up with a accent edition, whatever, like an entry
Well, the
level
one
coupe.
that's creating all the buzz on the interwebs is the Casper. Have you heard about this?
No.
It's their little micro, like maybe a little bigger than a K car. I was going to say it's a K car. I think it's size bigger than that, but it's definitely like an urban.
Oh
It
yeah, that's cute.
kind of reminds me of the first generation Scion XB a little bit.
Yeah. No, I'm
Anyway,
looking at pictures. That looks super cute.
yeah. So that's kind of their kind of budget play for EVs. I don't know. I know it's a 400-volt architecture. It's not eGMP. I don't know. I think that's just single speed. Um, but I do know different companies have experimented with a transmission with EVs, whether, like you said, whether that's a CVT or like a geared transmission. Some of the Hyundai plug-in hybrids have basically I think a dual clutch with an electric motor. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, the concept has some validity. I think what it comes down to is cost to manufacture, and potential maintenance costs and reliability and durability. So that's basically all the stuff they have to test for. So maybe they tested it and said, "Oh yeah, it gets zero point zero 0.01, it's zero point zero 0.01, you know, watt hours per mile more efficient, but it costs more to make, or vice versa." So yeah, I don't know where everything falls once all those factors are put in consideration. So yeah.
We're gonna have to scoot along because we are like 40 minutes into this and we're like halfway through, and I am not gonna sit here for a full hour.
Okay. Okay.
So you've got an item in our rundown, Lucid, to make not one but three models to compete with the Model 3 and Y. Sure, why not?
Yeah.
I mean, I,
Yeah. I mean, they're trying to do what Tesla did a few years ago, is going from the S and X, which were high end 100,000 plus vehicles, to more mass market. So here we are with the 3 and Y in the basically high 30s, low 40s range. Um,
if they're gonna do this, they need to do it now because
yeah.
they keep running out of cash.
Well,
And they're
Saudis keep giving it to them,
the
but
Saudis keep giving them to it, but that
how
will
long is that going to
end.
last?
Yeah. Eventually, you got to show profitability. You got to show a road to profitability. You got to show something. And so they need to do this. They need to do it fast. They need to. They
Well,
need
I'll
to
tell
make
you
it.
who didn't, but the winner could end up being the consumer, is Fisker.
This kind of it's neat. So Fisker had a brand of charger with Wallbox, or what's?
Yeah, it's Fisker branded Wallbox, and Wallbox is a pretty well-known
Yeah.
home level 2 EV charger. So I guess um, Fisker had some sort of like co-branding agreement with Wallbox to sell the quote official Fisker charger, and now as part of basically as part of their bankruptcy process, they're crazy Gideon and
Yeah.
stacking them deep and selling them cheap.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, now you can get one for more than 50% off, evidently. So
That's fantastic.
so if you don't mind the Fisker branding, that's not
A
weird or
sticker will take care of that.
yeah.
I will sell you a sticker.
You can put a Watt car sticker on
Yeah,
it.
put a one car sticker on there, and I will sell that to you. No, that seems
Yeah,
like
original price 545, now $250. So
yeah. If you're looking for a charger, I mean, it's a brand name. Don't let the Fisker thing. I mean, Fisker ultimately didn't make anything, and that was the
yeah,
problem.
yeah, they
So
outsourced pretty much everything. Yeah.
yeah, and what they didn't outsource was, or if they outsourced it, they did it to the cheapest bidder was the software.
Yeah,
seems to be a
evidently,
problem.
because a lot of issues with that.
Yeah, so this is a 40 amp level 2 home charger. All right, moving on.
Yeah. So
Uh,
this is not exactly breaking news now. This has probably been about a week. Ford officially announced their pivot on electrification, less EVs, more hybrids, with a quote range of electrification options designed to speed customer adoption, including lower prices and longer ranges. Okay, sounds good.
what
Um,
surprises me with this is how
mhm,
fast these companies can pivot like this. You always hear that it takes like 8 years to get from paper to pavement, and
mhm,
some of these other companies, like Chinese companies, can do it in like a year and a half, and
mhm,
but the lead time is so long, and now it's like these manufacturers now have got its manufacturing so dialed that they just turn a knob
mhm,
on once it's up and running, that it is simply, let's dial this back and dial that in,
mhm.
and here we go. And now we have fewer EVs, more hybrids, and we're good to go. It just impresses me how fast they can
Well, I
pivot.
mean, it helps when a lot of the so-called investments are still on paper and not actually, shovels in the ground.
Yeah,
So
and the skunk works that Ford is working
yeah,
on with the cheap EV, like that's years away
yeah.
from ever producing anything. Like we won't
Supposedly
see a
2027, if that,
and that's when we'll probably see the concept vehicle.
and then production a year or two after that.
Yeah. So that is a harder knob to turn. But when you actually got the production going, it just seems like they can dial it one way or the other, much to the chagrin of, I'm sure, Sean Fain at the UAW, because that always means fewer work hours in one place and more work. Well, he's all for the more work hours, but the fewer is
Well,
really
one
tough.
knob that can be turned pretty quickly, evidently, is tariffs. And so, think a couple months ago, we announced Biden administration announced 100% tariffs on Chinese EVs. Well, it looks like Canada's following suit. So we'll see how this plays out.
I wonder if
And
this applies to the bus you were in. No, because they were making that in Irwindale. So
yeah,
it should.
yeah, it depends on how much of that they actually make stateside versus how much they import from China. So I don't know. And I don't know if commercial vehicles are included in that. I'm not sure.
Oh yeah, because there was the whole like chicken tax and
Yeah, so
ways
I
around everything.
I don't know how that factors into that, but yeah. So I think I don't know if it was last episode or a couple episodes ago we talked about the European tariffs on Chinese EVs, where it's like tiered based on content and how much subsidies they got from the Chinese government, blah blah blah. This is seems like it's just kind of across the board, 100% boom done. Um, I think I read this is going to go into effect either October or the end of December. Not 100%, but anyway,
We have heard for years the Chinese are coming when it comes to auto manufacturing. And we've always been a bit like, I don't know.
yeah, we'll see. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. There are definitely uh, politicians, that's the word I'm looking for, that are convinced of this in
Yeah.
America, in China, and in Europe, that they have taken action and signed this stuff in
Hmm.
for all these tariffs. They are definitely scared. I guess
Hmm.
we're looking at it from a consumer point of view and going more options, more affordable vehicles. They don't seem to be designed particularly poorly. If anything,
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
reviews of the cars are good. So
Hmm.
why not bring them in? And that's like, I look at, can you repair them, stuff like that.
Hmm.
From a manufacturing point of view and jobs, I could certainly see though
Hmm.
where you would want to protect your nation of workers
Hmm.
and not get overrun and end up where we are with chip manufacturing with computers, where you just don't have any of it in America.
Yeah.
And so I guess this is good from a protectionist point of view.
Well, yeah, certainly from a protectionist point of view, what I think this will I think the outcome from this is there will be more discussions about, and however you feel about this, one way or the other, is about more Chinese investment in the U.S. in terms of manufacturing. Now, some people might see that as kind of like a Trojan horse, and oh boy, what's going to happen? But I would say, politics aside, the whole kind of political philosophy thing, I would say by and large, if you look at the Japanese, which I think started with Honda in like the early to mid 1980s in Ohio, has since spread to several plants throughout the country. Toyota, basically all the major Japanese OEMs have pretty extensive manufacturing operations in the US, employ thousands of Americans. I would say that's been a net positive, I would say. So if the Chinese could be convinced, whether, through carrots or sticks or tariffs or whatever analogy you want to use, to set up shop in the US, it could be a net plus for our economy. But I mean, I could definitely see how the domestic OEMs, the already established transplants like the Japanese and the Koreans, could feel threatened by this. But I think this is just kind of a new reality. I mean, I think this is kind of the situation we were in with the Japanese in the 80s and 90s. I mean, we're seeing it happen again with China. So to be determined, but it's going to be interesting.
Speaking of protectionism, I want to protect my personal time. So I'm going to end the podcast here. A little bit longer than I wanted. We're good to go. Everything we talked about will be available in the show notes. The show notes are embedded into the podcast. They're also available on thewhatcar.com. When you go to thewhatcar.com, you can type in /store at the end of there, and you can help support the podcast and the blog by purchasing a t-shirt or a
hat,
a backpack, a water bottle. We got a few things on there and potentially more. I've been shopping. So I just create new products that I need, and there you go. If you want a product that you don't see up there that you would like, whether it's a t-shirt idea or whatnot, send me an email, hello@thewhatcar.com. Let me know. I can create something for you too, and then you can order it, and you can help support the podcast and the blog. We have, I normally say social media. We're on social media, but the best thing to do there is share us. If you find any content, because we also do some content on thewhatcar.com, share that. You can share the podcast, whatever you want to do.
YouTube now?
We're on YouTube. You can like and subscribe. We're not pushing that at all. Just FYI. You're welcome to, but I am not putting the work into that. It's going up purely because we have the video when we record the podcast, and why throw it away? Why not eat up Google's resources and put it online somewhere? And then we also run a deal for thewhatcar.com/advertise for major manufacturers
like BYD.
Like BYD. We will take Chinese money. I have no problem with this because
and ride their buses.
It's the American way, capitalism. So yeah, and ride their buses and get where we want to go. Next week is hopefully something special that you've been working on. So I can't wait for that.
All right. See you then.